Welcome. From being a jiu-jitsu champion to running a cafe at the beach, having a difficult, tumultuous life and turning her past around and becoming a success. That's Michelle Lowe's story and she's our guest.
Hi.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, thank you for having me
Great
today.
to have you with us.
Cheers.
Michelle, you have got a really interesting backstory and you've got a really interesting current story. So tell me, you're a good student at school?
Yeah, I was pretty switched on. I did well, I paid attention. Dad was pretty strict on that. So,
but then things sort of fell off the rails a bit at the end of school?
Yeah.
I think that's a difficult time for everyone, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So I was 16 and at that point, the high school I went to, 5 of my teachers were fired suddenly by the new principal and the students decided to strike against the school.
Okay.
I remember rocking up to school one day and just everyone we were on strike and I was like, okay, cool. And we went on strike for 2.5 days. 3 of those teachers were my teachers, my SACE teachers, and I was sort of at a point in high school as well where I was starting to lose a bit of interest.
Well, teenage life, you've got to test yourself. You've got to test the world against yourself, or yourself against the world.
And I think I was realising that whilst I knew how to do the work, I was more interested in socialising. Let's be honest.
I think that's every teenager's story,
that's
really.
Most teenagers.
But it's how far the socialising goes, I suppose.
Correct. And so at that point, it was a pretty big disruption and I got to a bit of a point of I've done a lot of my SACE work, but now my teachers that were looking after that sort of thing, they're now gone. And I think from that point started wagging school a bit.
Right.
And I met my boyfriend, my first real boyfriend at that point, and I left school.
Right.
Yes.
And you were how old?
I was 16.
When did the jiu-jitsu start in your life?
Jiu-jitsu didn't start until I was 32.
Oh, really? So what happened in those years in between?
A lot. So I actually had my first daughter when I was 17.
Right.
Isabella, and that was to my then boyfriend. And we got a house and unfortunately it wasn't a very healthy relationship.
Well, first of all, that's difficult to have a child at 17.
Absolutely.
You're not really prepared for motherhood. Mind you, in a lot of cultures, that's normal.
Yes, yeah.
But in our culture, it isn't really, is it?
No, it's not. And I remember being pregnant at 16 and 17 and getting looks and then walking around with a newborn baby as a child. Okay.
How difficult was that for you to adjust? Because suddenly it's not all about you, it's about the child.
I actually loved it. I love my daughter.
Did you love it because you had somebody to love?
Correct.
Right.
Correct. I really wanted to be a good mum.
And your partner at the time was not. How did he treat you?
He was very abusive. Very abusive.
Because he was young and couldn't cope with the situation?
No, that's not why. Because even as a 30-year-old man, he's still on the same path.
Right.
So.
And what do you think causes that? Is it within the initial upbringing, do you think? Is it watching how his father or other male members of the family behave?
I think that can be a part of it. I don't know what his childhood was like.
Right.
In that, so I don't know if there's any domestic violence in their household. I'm certainly not going to insinuate that there was.
No, sure.
However,
but there's got to be reasons for things like this.
Absolutely. What ended up happening in the end was I ended up having him arrested because he was physically abusive for years.
And that's the problem. It's the physical abuse, isn't it?
Yeah. And it was the physical abuse, it was the emotional, it was the coercive control, it was everything. So we hear about domestic violence being all of these things, and in some instances it is only, I will never say only, it is physical or it is coercive or it is emotional or it is financial. And in this position that I was in, it was all of those things. He took complete control of my life.
Right.
And there were times where I did leave. I was able to leave, but that was purely because he was okay with me leaving.
Right. Where could you go when you left?
I went to my dad's at one point. I stayed with his mum at one point. I, towards the end, got my own house with our daughter. But even at that point, when he felt like he wanted to come around and visit, he would. And there wasn't a lot that I could do about that. I didn't feel there was a lot I could do about that. I was at that point 19 years old.
Well, how do you cope with the cost of legal help? There is free legal help, but how far does it go?
And I honestly didn't know where to turn. And also...
And what about income?
I was working. I always worked. He did not.
Right.
I always worked from when I was 15. Yes. I was mum. I was the breadwinner. He did not a lot at all. Didn't hold a job for very long. But then would take the money, would take control of the money.
Right. That's really hard. And why we're talking about this is really to talk about how you changed your life.
Yeah.
From being in an abusive relationship, having a young child, and then how did the jiu-jitsu start then? What took you along to a class? Oh, sorry, before you answer that, perhaps you should tell everybody what you've achieved in jiu-jitsu.
So I've competed. Look, I'm not the best in South Australia by any means. However, I was ranked at one point second best female white belt, which if anybody who knows jiu-jitsu knows that is the beginning, but it is the hardest. It is the hardest belt to get because you actually have to walk onto the mats.
Right.
So I've competed interstate in Victoria at the Gathering. I've competed at many local competitions. I was invited to compete in the M16 Open, which is a South Australian competition where my match was against Nora Schultz, who is now a world champion. Right. So to lose against, and I lost, and that's fine. It is very humbling. And jiu-jitsu takes your ego.
But to get to the point of being in a position to be picked to do that, they're not going to pick somebody who can't
compete. Yes. And it's been amazing. I'm very competitive, and being able to step on the mats and to calm yourself, to go and perform and to focus.
I guess, isn't it?
And to perform. It is a performance. It is, and you get 5 minutes. 5 minutes maximum to show where your skills at, whether you can keep calm in that situation, and if you can outsmart your opponent. Because
how much physical training do you have to do?
A lot. A lot. To be competition ready, you really need to be training.
So what would a week be like for you?
When I was in competition, I would train 2 to 3 hours a day.
Yep.
So I would weight train in the mornings with a little bit of cardio, and then I would spend 1 to 2 hours a night training jiu-jitsu.
So it's dedication.
There's a lot of dedication. It's consistency.
And why did you take that particular
sport?
I suppose, sport.
There's two reasons.
I was about to call it an art form because in many ways it sort of is.
It really is. There's 2 reasons. One of them was egotistical because I was training to compete in bodybuilding before I started jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And I found it to be and I hate to say this because there are a lot of people who are very good at it, but I couldn't, as a single mum, I felt selfish, spending so much time and money and energy on that.
Because it's a special diet. And the time.
Yeah, and then the training and it's a lot, and the posing, and I was dragging my daughter around all the time to all these different places to fulfill the requirements.
Being a good mum.
Yeah, and I felt like I wasn't spending enough time with her. So one day I looked at her after climbing the stairs for 20 minutes and being like, this is very empty, and I quit. I booked a cruise for myself and my daughter with the money that I'd put away for the bodybuilding. Right. Because it's before COVID as well. So, right. And I had an inwards tantrum and I ate everything.
An inward tantrum, I like that.
An inwards tantrum.
I've never heard that expression before.
I didn't tell anybody, but inside I was like, I'm eating everything. I don't care now. And I I put on a lot of weight very quickly, and then I freaked out. And I was driving down the road one day near my house, and I saw a sign that said Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I was like, that's got to be cardio. Like, I need to do some cardio. That's got to be cardio. I don't even know what it is. And I went in and I had a 1-week trial, and I walked in and I met one of the coaches and I said, hi, I want to do jiu-jitsu. And he looked at me and was like, okay. And then they paired me up with a 14-year-old boy and said, okay, you're going to sit on top of him and do this, and you're going to do an Americana. And they taught me how to do that.
Right. These are the moves.
These are the moves. Yeah, that's a very simple white belt. Well, anybody can do that, but there's a very simple move. And they taught me how to do that. And then they said, okay, well, now you can go roll with this young man who was 16. And I'm like 32 years old, and just like, these are like my children. Like, oh, no, this is the same age as my daughter.
Yep.
But they were so friendly. It was fighting, but it was so friendly.
Did you feel like you'd come home?
It felt very natural.
Right.
It felt nice, and it felt like home. I felt accepted in there.
Accepted. Isn't that what we all want?
Yeah.
Yep. Now, we're going to take a short break,
Sure.
Michelle, and we'll be back in a tick because we're talking about what happened next to this lovely girl and how she's opened a brilliant business that everybody's really enjoying. We'll be back in a tick. Michelle Lowe is our guest, and we've been talking about her background, and now we're about to find out what's happening. But that's just a quick reminder before the break. We were just saying how, in a way, jiu-jitsu, it's actually hard to say jiu-jitsu. Got to really make your tongue work.
It gets shortened to BJJ quite often.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
But did it turn your life around?
Yeah, it did, absolutely.
How?
It was humbling, for starters. Coming from doing a lot of weightlifting and thinking I'm super strong, and it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter.
It's a skill in itself.
It's a skill.
Yeah.
It's very technical. It gave me, I'd moved across from Adelaide. I used to live in the northern suburbs, and I'd moved to the southern suburbs. And the gym family were lovely, nothing, and I still have lots of close friends there. But it gave you this community, and not only in our own gym, but in the gyms that are around Adelaide.
Right, because of the competitive element of it? Or?
It is, but it's also because even though it is fighting, and it's martial art, and like you are looking, it's combative. It simulates murder, let's be honest. But you don't want to hurt each other. You don't want to hurt your training buddies.
So you've got to have restraint.
Restraint and respect.
Yeah.
And it teaches you control. And not only physical control, but control of yourself. And when you very first start out, everybody does it. They spaz. So if I was to try and fight you right now,
yes.
You would likely do a bit of this.
No, I just lay down.
You would just.
I'm dead now.
You're like, no, just no. But a lot of people, when they very first start, and it's about 3 months of it, where they'll spaz out, they'll freak out, they don't control their breathing, and that's normal.
Right.
That's the fight reflex.
Okay, yes.
But as you do it more and you learn and you feel more comfortable with yourself and your own abilities, you learn to control your breathing. Now, these days especially, there's a lot of breath work, breath work workshops.
Yep.
And the breath is being able to control your breath is very important for calming.
It's interesting, yes, because now people who have issues, emotional issues and so on, the suggestion is to stop and breathe slowly and just try and bring your body and your brain down.
Correct.
Yep.
To be able to do that while you're fighting.
Yeah, but that's like, I'm an entertainer or a performer. So one of the things we have to learn is how to control nerves and then how to calm yourself down before you go and do whatever you do.
Correct. And it's the same when stepping onto the mat.
It's the same in virtually everything in life.
Yep.
Because things that can raise your heart rate and raise your whole sort of pressure of life, you've just got to learn how to calm.
Correct.
So you've been doing that, you've been competing, and then you thought, Why would you start a coffee club, or what would you call it? A coffee
burger bar
truck, a burger
So,
bar.
well, I didn't mean to
beach.
start. I didn't mean to start a burger bar, to be honest. So when COVID started, what was it? 2020 March, 2020.
Just after the Adelaide Fringe.
It
How
was.
can we forget?
It was, and I lost my job because I was a cafe manager / head chef.
Okay, so that's how you had the background in.
Yeah, I mean,
cafe.
I'd been a chef since I was 19 when I left my eldest daughter's.
Right.
Yeah, so I've got 2 daughters actually. So I lost my job because the owner of the cafe said that takeaway wasn't a viable way of running business.
Well, they were a bit wrong there, weren't they?
Yes, It was the only way to run a business at that time.
Of course.
And we thought we were like the musicians on the Titanic and that we were going to go down the ship. The hospitality industry did anyway, and we were the first to go. So when that happened, Centrelink didn't come through. I rang and said, hey, single mum, lost my job. They're like, yeah, no worries. We'll set something up. No, it took 3 months.
Yep.
And after 2 weeks, I started freaking out. I didn't have jiu-jitsu anymore because they got shut down. The gym got shut down. My work got shut down, and I was lost. Freaked out, applied for a bunch of jobs, Telstra, whatever was going, and was like, nope, do you know what? Went on Gumtree, bought a camping trailer with a barbecue on it and a couple of Eskies in a fold-down trailer, attached it to my Toyota Surf, which wasn't in the best nick, got it cleaned up, passed through the health officers with council, applied for a permit, and on the Easter long weekend, I took my trailer out and sold bacon, egg and cheese rolls for $6.50 on the beach. That's how I started.
Brilliant. But what possessed you to do the beach? Because that's where people were.
That's where people were.
You're able to get out. See, these are things that people don't realise. Well, not so much we don't realise. We know there are stories that happened during COVID that we're only now hearing about how people survived. What did they do?
I didn't know how long COVID was. I didn't know.
Who did? Yeah.
No one knew. And I remember one morning my daughter saying, do we have to go out? She was 9 then, my littlest one, Chardonnay. And I was like, this is life now. This is what we do. We go, we sell the rolls, we come home.
We go to the beach.
We go to the beach. We go to the beach,
What
we
do
sell
you
the rolls. My friend Christine, she had a coffee van across the road,
Right.
parked in the front of her house, and I parked in the car park across at Seaford. And I said, we're the biggest open air cafe in South Australia.
Yes, good space between the two.
It's fantastic. And so she did coffee, I did food.
Right.
It started getting cold, winter came along, I upgraded. So I bought a secondhand food van from the Victor Harbour Caravan Park. It was called the Boom Box Kitchen. It was it was big black thing that looked like an old school boom box.
Right.
And it was cool. It had speakers in it, and I was like, this is very retro. It reminds me of my childhood.
Yeah, hence boombox.
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 And that had a fridge, and I bought a generator, and it had a nice proper grill inside. And as a chef, I was like, oh, there's a real grill, and there's fridge, and there's electricity, and there's running water, as opposed to this weird little barbecue. And I started using that. My friend Shane from Jiu Jitsu came along, and he helped me out. He'd serve people, and we got a following. We ended up with quite a following.
Well, I imagine, to have something right where people were able to be.
Yeah. It was a novelty. It was something to do.
Yeah, perfect.
And that's part of who I am is I love giving people joy. And during COVID, there wasn't a lot.
No, it wasn't a lot of joy.
There wasn't a lot of joy. And this big, weird, cheap, the food was well priced. I knew people didn't have money. I didn't have a lot of money.
No, well, that's the other thing too. You wouldn't have made a great deal at $6.
No. Didn't. I put the price up and increased my menu, but we were profitable and very low overheads.
Yeah.
Had never been in business in my life.
And no staff to pay.
No, or just my mate Shane. And I'll be honest, some days I had him come out with me and we didn't make very much, and he was like, it's all right, mate, can I just have a burger and a can of Coke? I was like, dude, I will make it up to you one day. And he's still with me. And he is one of my most valued friends and employees. I can rely on him. His last name is Wright. So he's my
okay.
right-hand man.
Right.
And when
Don't you love that when the surname matches the personality?
he thinks he's always right. But also when I started developing the menu and it evolved, a lot of the menu items are named after people that I know that have influenced me in scenarios. So we have a burger called the Whoopsie. It is vegan and is named after one of my previous staff members who was vegan, who would drop stuff a lot.
Okay.
And she'd be like, whoopsie.
Okay.
So,
yep.
And when Shane would ask I say, what would you like for lunch, mate? And he'd be like, this. And we created a burger and I called it the Right Stuff because it's named after Shane and it's what he ate.
So this is continuing to develop now.
Absolutely. I don't think it will ever be finished. There will be no complete.
Well, you've got a family now. Are they going to follow in Mum's footsteps?
My
with
daughter,
the business?
my eldest daughter, I'm not too sure. My youngest daughter at her year 6 graduation stood up on stage and said, in 10 years time, I see myself owning my own cafe. So I don't know if she'll want a Shelby's, but I know that she wants to be a baker. So
it's amazing though. Our parents influence in so many different ways. I mean, hence talking about your first partner, you think, what causes a man to be brutal to anybody, particularly a woman? And as a man who was brought up to respect women and to open doors for women and to do all the things that my age group were taught to do, it's just not conceivable how. But what's more particular, that it's not conceivable that you would want to treat another human being badly.
No.
That's really what it is.
Correct. So part of Chefy Shelby's, so the reason I have this very short hair.
You're saying this name, so
sorry.
What does the name represent?
It's me. So my friends nicknamed me Shelby about a decade or so ago. And
Michelle to Shelby.
Michelle to Shelby,
yep.
right.
Yep.
And it's spelled with a C because there's no S in Michelle.
Yes.
So, and so when I separated from my ex-husband is when Instagram started becoming a thing. And my friend at the time said, you need to have Instagram. I'm going to create your profile. And I was like, well, what are you going to call me? She's like, well, we call you Shelby and you're a chef. So it can be Chefy Shelby. So that was my Instagram name. So the business then came along when I was saying to a friend, I don't know what to call it. It was just when it was the camping trailer as well. I was like, it needs an Instagram thing. So I just put an S at the end because it's yours and it's Chefy Shelby's. Yes. It belongs to you.
Yes.
So that's what it is.
Yeah, fantastic.
Simple.
Wait there a tick. There's still more to come and we'll be back with that in just a moment. We've been talking to Michelle Lowe about her complete change about in life, because that's what it's been, hasn't it?
It has been, yeah.
A tough start, a good education, a bit of a tough start, and then finally finding what makes you tick and turning it into a business career. So you started with the little
barbecue trailer
thing. Then you got the beatbox van. What happened next?
Next up was I was offered a small hole in the wall in Port Noarlunga in the main street. And I took that. It was nothing. There was nothing in it, and we converted it into a commercial kitchen within 2 weeks and opened up there in June 2020. So it was very quick progression.
Yep.
And then a year later, we took over the Indian restaurant, which was next door. We knocked out the wall. We got a bar, entertaining area, started doing music, got licensed. It was really cool. And then opened up another shop in Morford Vale on Brodie Road to service the tradies. And I was able to employ a lot more people, especially a lot of young women who are wanting to continue their
do what
career.
You did, I guess.
Yeah.
You've got another one.
And now we've got another one. So we lost the venue in Port Noarlunga, unfortunately, due to some structural issues to the building. But we opened up in Christie's Beach on Beach Road a few weeks ago. And it's a beautiful venue. It's stunning, and it's really the benchmark for the others to come.
Okay, and you may be starting your whole chain, and they'll all be called
Chefy Shelby's.
There you go. There's a name to remember. Look, thanks and congratulations on turning your life around as much as you have.
Thank you.
And for you, I'm just delighted. That's just fantastic. And I hope that's been encouraging for you to hear Michelle's story. And just remember, if you're having domestic violence issues, do something about it.
Please do. Please speak out.
Yeah, speak out and do it soon. Until next time, though, keep yourself nice till then, and we'll see you next time on Our Time. Bye.